Hi, Craig Sawman Sawyer here with G2 Research. We're testing out their new 380 RIP ammunition today against most of its major competitors. We'll start off with the RIP round and see what it does. We're using the same weapons and the same gel block for all the different rounds today so that we can demonstrate that there's no changing of the gelatin or conditions or anything like that. We're shooting them all one after the other into the same gel block so that you've got the same conditions. Everybody's getting like treatment here. All right, we've got a nice dispersion here. We've got a pattern that's about 3.5 inches wide with this 380 RIP round. And those trocars that have broken off and torn those additional wound cavities have gone right at 4 inches of depth, if you can see that. And the main projectile went 10 inches. So we've got 10 inches of penetration of that. Now I'm 220 pounds and I'm 11 inches from front to back. So this thing is basically gone right to what would have been my spinal cord as an example. So good penetration for a 380, but you've also got these additional wound channels. So it's basically like getting shot with a bullet and stabbed with a bunch of knives in addition, just tearing a bunch of tissue and causing much more internal damage and bleeding to stop the threat. All right, so now we'll shoot the other bonded bullets and just see how those look in the ballistics gelatin and see how those perform relative to the RIP round. All right, we've got 3 of the competitive rounds shot along the right side of this ballistics gelatin. You've got 2 of them that have gone completely through the gel block and have not stopped within the gelatin whatsoever. Similar permanent wound cavity, very small permanent wound cavity, but completely through. And you've got one that's stopped at, again, 10 inches or 10 1/4 inch of total penetration. So 2 through and throughs and one that actually stopped in the vitals. But again, just one permanent wound cavity without the additional ones that you would have with the RIP round. So, all right, again, now on this left side with three more competitive rounds, you've got one that came in at about just under 10 inches, 9.5 inches, 9 3/4 inches. And the other 2 just sailed straight through. One of them, very, very tiny wound cavity. Looks like a 22. I mean, very, very tiny. The one that stopped actually gave a little better permanent wound cavity initially and then slowed, and one just with an average size wound cavity that went completely through. So now, having fielded a bunch of questions about my testing of this ammunition, a lot of guys are saying, well, what about my favorite round, this one, that one, or the other? My observation is that they all act pretty much the same. A lot of them don't stop and dissipate their energy into the target like they're intended to. The ones that do all are performing the same, and they're just bonded bullets. They all can only do a certain amount, and what they do is they tear one permanent wound cavity through, and either they stop or they continue and don't dissipate their energy into the target. So if you got a through and through, in my opinion, you don't have as good effect as you do if the round actually mushrooms in there and stops and dissipates that energy as it's tearing a larger wound cavity. But any typical bullet's going to do the same thing, tear a small hole and either stop or not. But with the RIP round, you've got them tearing a permanent wound cavity through, but you've also got the additional wound cavities. It's basically like getting stabbed with a bunch of knives in addition to shot with a bullet in the middle. So it's I mean, I learned from Dr. Martin Fackler, the world's foremost authority on terminal wound ballistics, that you want a lot of severing of the internal organs and the tissue in there. That bleeding is what really helps stop the threat and shut them down. So you've got the effect of a typical projectile with the RIP round, but you've also got the trocars, which act as additional surgical cuts that sever multiple wounds in a 360-degree pattern around that. So it's just much more terminal effect, period. You can look at it and see the effect. Physical feed test.